All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 2021 meeting of the Human Trafficking Task Force of Southern Colorado. My name is Julie Beller, and I am the chair for the board of directors for this amazing task force. Thank you for taking a bit of time out of your week to gather virtually with us and other like-minded citizens who are focused on the goal of seeing an end to human trafficking. Just 3 quick housekeeping items. I know there are a few more people in the waiting room, but I'm going to go ahead and start with this. We do ask that you stay muted in our meetings. It helps us to keep the meeting moving along smoothly, but we also encourage you to continue using the chat function throughout the meeting. Connect with one another, grab each other's emails or other contact information. That's what that is for. We do want you to connect with each other, so use that as much as possible. Second, we are recording this meeting. If you're concerned about having your face shown in the recording that will be posted on our website, then just take a moment to turn off your camera. We'd love for you to turn it back on at the very end of the meeting. It's just nice to see people's smiling faces. Even if it is on a screen, I can edit that out of the recording. But if you're concerned that your face will show during the meeting, go ahead and turn your camera off. Last, and this one is important, if you have a question during our meeting, either for me or for the speaker when she is presenting this evening, please private message host Jane Jones, who will keep track of all of those questions, and she'll present them at the end of the presentation. So again, private message your question to host Jane Jones, and also write in front of your question, all in caps, write the word question so that she can kind of monitor and keep track of those for us. This task force is a grassroots, all volunteer-based organization who is guided by a board of directors. Our founder, Mrs. Betty Edwards, learned about human trafficking and decided that there was indeed something that she could do to help. And that is why we are here. We are not politically affiliated and we are not religiously based. We believe that human trafficking is a human rights issue. It is an issue that should be addressed by all political parties and people of all beliefs and backgrounds all around the world. Though we are currently meeting virtually, know that all of the names that you see pop up on the participants list and in the chat are concerned citizens who, just like you, joined this meeting tonight to connect, to network and collaborate, and to learn about the issue of human trafficking and how we can get involved. It is our common focus, and I'm honored to be with you tonight as we learn about some pretty awesome services for survivors of human trafficking right here in Colorado. Our vision in this task force is to end modern day slavery in Southern Colorado. It's a big one, but we believe it can happen. Our mission is to be involved in preventing labor and sex trafficking through awareness and advocacy, intervening in the human trafficking cycle through collaboration with individuals, agencies, and organizations, and connecting those impacted by modern day slavery to restorative services. What do? We have monthly meetings, the second Tuesday of every month of the year, except for the 2 months that we missed at the beginning of COVID. We gather together. We do hope that soon enough we will be able to meet at least some of us in person, but we will continue these virtual meetings every month so that we can come together, network, and get to know each other. We have community presentations. If you're interested in having a group that you're involved with learn a little bit more about human trafficking, you can reach out to Lisa Brandt. She is in this meeting tonight, so you can find her name in the chat and request a presentation. She would be happy to connect with you. We host an annual symposium, an awareness event. I don't know what that's going to look like exactly this year, but we will have it either virtually or in person, or maybe even both. Kathy Cook is the board member that's in charge of that. She is here in this meeting, and you can reach out to her in the chat if you're interested in learning more, or maybe how you can get involved in helping us plan that event. Advocacy Day at the Capitol is something that we hosted for about 7 years. We have been unable the last 2 years to get that one pulled off the ground, but we hope to do so maybe here this year. We're just figuring out a way that we can get that done. We have a diversion program with the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office. And I'm excited to say that we might be able to have another one of those coming up very soon. And survivor support is something that we are involved in. The last item on the list, the one that we are focused on this evening, survivor support. In our mission statement, this falls into connection, connecting those impacted by modern day slavery to restorative services. One thing that we know well is that survivors of human trafficking often need a plethora of support, various services of all kinds to move forward with their lives once their trafficking situation has come to an end, or as it's coming to an end, as they're working toward an exit. These include safety planning, that's short-term and long-term, therapy of all sorts, emotional, psychological, and sometimes even physical therapy is needed, life skills training, budgeting, job skills, interview training, etc. And one that may not often be thought of is legal services. I think we can probably all agree that legal services can be expensive and sometimes intimidating, maybe even confusing. I know it would be for me to figure out how to access and understand the things that I need in that realm. And this is the reason I'm really excited about our speaker this evening, who is going to share with us about how her organization meets this very specific need for survivors of human trafficking. Next, we have a few announcements. I am really excited to let you know that there's a new book out on the market. It is co-authored by Jessa Dillocrisp. Many of you know her. She has spoken at our meetings before. She has spoken at a number of our symposiums. This book is titled Leaving the Life, and it's a workbook that tells the story of Alyssa and will provide insights and resources for survivors of human trafficking and their next steps towards freedom and healing. This book is to be used as a resource for survivors and those who walk alongside them towards healing, empowerment, and thriving. This is not Jessa's story specifically, but she helped to influence it and helped write it with her lived experience. Maybe someday she will write her bio for all of us, but that hasn't happened yet. But she is excited to have this book out there, and I do hope that you will go to your favorite bookseller, whoever that might be, and order this book and read it and learn all that you can from it. Our next one is Laboratory to Combat Human Trafficking. Now, if you know very much about them, you know that they run our Colorado State Human Trafficking Hotline, and they are getting ready to train a new set of volunteers to help run that hotline. You do have to attend all sessions if you're interested in becoming a hotline volunteer. That will be happening on April 24th and 25th and May 1st and 2nd. There will be a link in the chat, it's also on the slide, that you can send an inquiry to start the process if you're interested in learning what it is like to be a hotline volunteer and how you can enter into that training. Go ahead and reach out to them. They're a fabulous organization. And if you're interested in just a real life volunteer opportunity, that's a great one to try out. And next we have Jenny Jessen with us, who will be making an announcement on behalf of Compass 31. Jenny?
Hello friends. I'm so excited to be with you again, even though we're virtual. I do look forward to a time that we can be in the same space, but this will suffice. So I'm super excited. We got approved for a group fundraiser with Modern Market Eatery. And it's specifically on Friday, February 26th, meals bought from 11 to 9 p.m. Through our link. You can pick up meals to carry out, or I think they're open for in-service dining as well. I'm going to drop the link if you want to make reservations in the chat box, and 30% of the meals purchased between 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. on that day will be donated back to Compass 31. So it's a fun way to support a local business, a local restaurant that's been struggling through COVID times, but also maximize generosity because they'll be donating proceeds to our efforts. So I'll drop the link in the chat, and if you want to make reservations, if we don't have 20 reservations by February 23rd, then they cancel the fundraiser. So just FYI.
That's good to know. So if you're interested in supporting two things in that way, go ahead and go register. I've never eaten at Modern Market, but maybe it's a new one I need to try. Thanks, Jenny, for making that announcement. Yeah. And we have one more announcement. and will be brought to us by KP Lovejoy from Porn Free, Colorado. KP, are you out there?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here with Jenny.
Oh.
Oh, hi, everybody. It's so great to see you. And I just wanted to announce that my new book, A Dangerous Trap for Tweens, that talks about the dangerous trap that I fell into when pornography exposure got its hook in my heart and led me into a lifetime of exploitation and violence that almost ended in my death. It talks about the trends on how pornography links to human trafficking. It talks about brain science, about why pornography is so harmful to young minds. And it's already shown up as number 4 in children's safety, number 4 in children's sexuality, number 11 in difficult conversations, and number 18 in fatherhood. So I'm super excited. Have a big, hairy, audacious goal of getting 100,000 into hands of parents and educators before school's out for summer so that we can have ongoing conversations about primary prevention of protecting little kids from the dangers lurking online. And you can get a copy on my website, pfco.today. They're free plus shipping. I just asked for the small shipping charges to be covered and I'm giving them away.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us and making that announcement. I love that you have a big audacious goal and I absolutely want to support that. I believe it can happen. You guys go ahead and reach out to both Jenny and KP in the chat and connect with them. You need to learn about what Compass 21 has going on, but also KP is very passionate about helping all of us, but especially children understand the dangers and the harms of pornography. Those of us that have children, it's something that we have to be aware of. It's not a fun topic to talk about, but let's be honest, it's out there everywhere and we need to know how to discuss this with our children so that if they happen to come across it, they know exactly what to do. And we as families know how to prevent that from happening as well. So I'm just really glad that both these beautiful ladies are in our community and active and here with us tonight. So next, I have a slide for you guys that lists out our board members. Most of these people are here this evening. If you want to reach out to them, this is the board that guides everything that our organization does. They put their heart and soul into what they do, running a diversion program, putting on a symposium, helping me out with these meetings, and connecting in our community. So feel free to reach out to them. And we'll use the next 5 minutes as a networking time. I do have 3 very full slides. We have a number of organizations with us here tonight. I think there's more than 30. And if you registered late, then you might not even be on the list. So I apologize about that. But Joey will flip through these 3 organizations and I've even alphabetized them for you this time. So if you know you're looking for a specific one and who that representative might be this evening, just look for their name on the list. So we'll take 5 minutes. Please use the chat, connect with each other, and then our speaker will be with us shortly.
Yeah, well, that does make you susceptible to respiratory things. Good in. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a skinny house. Driveway went up along the right side of it.
All right, if you are ready, we will be getting started in about 10 or 15 seconds. I just need to pull up my notes. All right, our speaker this evening is from ALIGHT. Mariana Kosharovsky is the founder and executive director of ALIGHT, Alliance to Lead Impact in Global Human Trafficking, a Colorado-based nonprofit organization with a mission to unlock a fresh start for survivors of human trafficking. ALIGHT rapidly matches survivor needs with untapped legal expertise through innovative technology. Mariana's expertise is rooted in over 10 years' experience in human trafficking law and technology in the United States and Eastern Europe and Russia. As an attorney, Mariana represented survivors of sex and labor exploitation at the domestic violence agency Sanctuary for Families. She is a contributing author of the American Bar Association book, Lawyers as Change Makers, which was published in 2016, and she holds a law degree from New York University Law School. Mariana, I'm so pleased to have you here with us this evening. Thank you for giving us your time.
Hello, everyone. What a pleasure to be here. I will start sharing my screen, but while I still have you on video, so much of what our work is about is recognizing that traffickers have been so savvy at using technology, abusing technology to hurt survivors. And our work at ALIGHT is very interested in how do we start using technology for good. And in fact, we have been doing it, and I'm really excited to show you what we have been working on. So I will start sharing my screen. That hopefully you're able to see it. Great, great. Well, my hope is to introduce some new advocates to our work and to equip you with the tools of how you can start connecting survivors to free legal services in Southern Colorado, and beyond. I even heard there are some folks from Pennsylvania and Ohio, and probably even New York, because I saw that Sanctuary for Families is also on this call, so that was very exciting. As Julie mentioned, I started working at Sanctuary for Family. In fact, my anti-trafficking career started there. I am a lawyer by training, and the first survivors I met and the first survivors I worked with was at Sanctuary. And it very much impacted me and inspired me to go into the direction that I did go into. And so I had a chance to work on trafficking in New York, in Eastern Europe and Russia, and then moved to Colorado, founding ALIGHT to focus on our work, really responding to how tech savvy traffickers have been for years. We're seeing that with every year, they're just light years ahead of us, and trying to bring in much more tools and more efficiency and more ways to help survivors faster, bring the technology on the side of survivor needs. So the points that I would love to address with our presentation today is understanding the legal impacts of trafficking, addressing the vast array of legal needs that survivors in fact hold, identifying legal issues, the basics of framing legal case summaries, and then how to access free legal assistance for survivors. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this heat map that Polaris has issued, reflecting calls and reports of trafficking in the country through 2018. And we know this is just the tip of the iceberg. And when I look at this map, this is part of what drives me, knowing that there's such a huge problem even beyond what we're seeing, and recognizing that it's important to have resources and to have reasons for survivors to come forward asking for help. So many are still in the shadows. So many are still too afraid or too ashamed to come forward. And so many also know that it's a struggle to get help. And so we want to make that easier. ALIGHT has a very, very specific place in the anti-trafficking world, in the anti-trafficking landscape. We work at the intersection of law, technology, and human trafficking. And our work involves mobilizing attorneys, both because of the mobile app and because we're engaging new attorneys across various specializations to empower victims and survivors with assistance on their legal problems. We call them nuts and bolts problems. These are daily life challenges that a lot of times are some of the many sort of potholes on their way forward, on their way to recovery. But if they're not addressed, they're real barriers to true freedom, to truly permanently exiting trafficking and stabilizing and building their families and having the success that we all deserve. We work with survivors of all forms of trafficking, regardless of gender identity, nationality, sexual orientation, religion, and age. creating a program that's as inclusive and broad as possible to address the many faces of trafficking and the many legal needs of trafficking. And as we have been doing this work, COVID hit. I don't, you know, how do we even wrap our minds around it? But one of the big changes that I wanted to share with you that affected our organization is we have been able to expand and expand markedly during this time, partly because our work uses technology and our work is based on a flexible system that meets survivors where they're at. And so in this time of need, and huge need and also complexity, we have seen skyrocketing requests from survivors from all across the country. There's definitely a scale of need at this time because those that are the most vulnerable tend to be the hardest hit. And as we continue to work on this, we realize there are what we call legal deserts. In some cases, entire states that don't have legal services available to survivors. And there are certainly very few free human trafficking specific legal services organizations that are available to survivors in the country. In fact, because there are so few of us, one of our steps was joining forces and during the pandemic forming the National Survivor Law Collective with a number of other organizations in other states so that we can better coordinate, better build resources, better brainstorm and address how to address the gaps and how to build more of a pipeline of resources for survivors going forward. But our reality during COVID, as I mentioned, was even though we started as a Colorado program where the majority of our work and our network is in Colorado, we have been hearing from survivors from all across the country, as I mentioned, and we've helped in more than 28 states to date. And there's a complexity issue also that even without COVID we were seeing, which then intensified during COVID, which is by the nature of trafficking, these are individuals that may have been moved by their traffickers across different states as part of their trafficking, or they may have escaped their trafficking by going to another state, which ends up creating not just legal challenges to unravel, but legal challenges in different jurisdictions. So in our legal system, in our society, not only do you need a specific specialization of an attorney for your specific type of need. If it's a divorce, you need a family law attorney. If you're dealing with debt, you need someone who's familiar with bankruptcy or consumer rights issues. All the legal areas are really broken up, and so you need to be able to connect to the attorney with the correct specialization. And then you're adding on the layer of not only do you need the right attorney at the right time to help you, but you also now need an attorney perhaps in multiple states to help you. And so this is something that we've been grappling with and addressing. We were also very, very honored that last year the American Bar Association passed Resolution 113, recognizing the model, the system that we established here in Colorado as the standard for using technology to engage attorneys in helping human trafficking survivors. And so this was also something that has been able to power our work because we use an app, because we have an entire remote flexible system, we've been able to continue working with attorneys from the home or office during last year, during this year. And so while many traditional models, traditional services have had to close or restrict services or have grappled with all the various challenges that we're all grappling with, survivors had nowhere to turn physically, or they would call offices and no one was there to answer. But we were able to continue not just uninterrupted, but in full force and expand. So the problem that we're addressing can almost be thought of as having two levels. One is, as you get to know survivors and their stories, you realize that no two stories are alike. No two situations or sets of needs are alike. And that means that survivors need different combinations of services that are particular to them and appropriate to them as they journey forward in their lives. And so they also have multiple legal issues across different areas of law that are blocking their recovery. And then a deeper level to the problem is that also very often survivors and sometimes the advocates working with them don't realize that the problems that survivors are grappling with, their daily life challenges, the effects of trafficking, in fact, have a legal dimension and are in fact legal issues with which attorneys can help, with which our attorneys can help, and with which the benefit of having a professional who's well-versed in the legal system on your side can really expedite the resolution of issues. You know, the most basic thing is even, sometimes I just encourage attorneys, you know, write your request on your firm letterhead. That will go far. But of course, that's just the first step. But we know that's how our society functions, right? But then there's just so much involvement that they can contribute. And the legal problems are varied, as I will get into, but zeroing in on just one legal problem of many that survivors have are criminal records. A survey from the National Survivor Network had revealed that over 90% of survivors had reported being arrested and having criminal records, which has direct, huge impact on their lives. So being forced into trafficking, being manipulated, being coerced into committing crimes that benefit the trafficker, in some cases where the trafficker ends up being prosecuted and is in jail for trafficking the survivor, still it's the survivor left holding the criminal records for years across different jurisdictions and left to advocate for themselves and left to fight to enforce the rights they already have in our legal system. That's a very unjust position to be in, to have someone who needs to be focusing on recovery, who has so many other issues to deal with, to be put in a place where they're dealing with our legal system that is treating them not within their rights and not within the status that they have. And so even just criminal records have the impact of, according to the survey, barriers to housing, barriers to employment, and many reported being unable to clear criminal records. How does someone move forward if they have criminal records? How can they have a chance at a life? And then on top of a criminal record, you layer on the fact that some may have multiple criminal records. You layer on the fact that they may have criminal records in multiple states. And then you layer on the fact that they may also have other issues they're battling, such as custody of their children or identity theft. And we work with survivors that come to us with one legal issue, and years down the line, we're working on their 6th legal issue. So it is quite a knot for them to untangle, and they should not have to untangle it by themselves. These are just some of the examples of those nuts and bolts legal issues that I mentioned. And ALIGHT's work focuses on nuts and bolts issues beyond immigration. And that is partly because I think a lot of times, from what I've seen in my work, trafficking can be associated with, right off the bat, with immigration law issues, that someone needs T visas and U visas. Which is certainly the case, which is certainly important. Those services can also tend to get federal funding, but we often forget that the majority of trafficking in the US is domestic trafficking. And besides immigration issues, survivors have so many other life problems that are in fact legal issues that attorneys can help them with. And so these are just some of the examples, and ALIGHT's model comes in to complement and strengthen what's already out there to make sure that we're able to provide something different and something that's needed, so that, again, those survivors have a reason to come forward and ask for help, because these are the type of things that they need help with. In addition to needing different types, help with different types of legal problems, different survivors also need a different type of help, different kind of support. Anything from advocacy, negotiating with third parties, things like that, to counsel, just getting advice. What are my options? What are my rights in this situation? And then to full-on representation, where they have an attorney of record showing up for them in court. But it's not just that one type of attorney that's with them in court. We want to be able to come in and support them wherever they are with whatever type of need that they have, which falls across the spectrum, as I mentioned. One form of advocacy and support that I'm not sure if you caught on the previous slide, but one of the issues that I had listed was intellectual property. Survivors need intellectual property attorneys. I don't know if many realize that. I actually was not thinking about that when we first launched our program, and I learned from the survivors coming to us that this is actually an area of expertise that we need in our network. Why is that? Some of you that may have heard the fantastic presentation of Megan Lundstrom of the Avery Center in the symposium that this task force put on last year, addressed how, especially during COVID, we are seeing so much more criminal activity moving online. And so if traffickers were savvy and using technology before, they're even more motivated now, and we're seeing those patterns. What this means for survivors is that there's increased issues around revenge porn, online privacy, cyber stalking that we have to pay attention to, which means a very specific area of law that we need to be able to bring in. And so even when survivors are fully within their rights, when they have their images up on third-party platforms and they're asking these platforms, I did not give permission. This is continuing to traumatize me, that images of me or videos of me are still up there, and it's against my wishes, it's against my rights. Even though they're fully within their rights, you may know it's still extremely challenging for them to enforce their rights. I mean, that's the trick. It's not, do you have rights to something? It's, do you have the power on your side? Do you have the resources on your side to enforce your rights? And so attorneys are a key area for this, bringing in to be able to advocate for survivors with third parties, use the might of their law firm and their contacts and everything else to make sure that those images are taken down and that survivors can actually reach a measure of justice. So this is going to be a quick portion, but this is where I invite everyone to become amateur attorneys to help survivors in that process of what they may not be thinking about, and really they should not be thinking about, but this is definitely an area where we can support them. How can we help translate the problems they're coming to us with, where appropriate, into legal issues that attorneys can help with? We often think of basic needs, and they're especially important now, such as food and shelter. But there are also basic needs that are legal needs, where they need to deal with safety, which are protection orders, for example, or creating bringing in family law help to work on child custody to make sure that they are walking out of the courtroom, they're walking out of the virtual hearing with custody of their child and not the trafficker. You know, in my view, that's a basic need of a survivor. If you don't have custody of your child, it's very hard to function or focus on anything else if your child is still in danger. Dealing with eviction issues and just the myriad of other issues. We have great resources on our website, which is at the bottom here, where we list out examples of survivors' legal needs. So that's a great place to look to help sort of jog your thought process as someone is explaining a situation to you. I'm having trouble with my landlord. You could think, what can this relate to? This could be an eviction issue. This could be a tenant's rights issue. This could be something that an attorney can help with. And to also check out specific resources that we developed to support survivors in their work with attorneys. And in fact, the tips for survivors self-empowerment, ALIGHT was very, very fortunate to be able to co-develop with a mental health expert and with our friends at Bridge Hope to make sure that we're creating a resource that can speak more to survivors and can help them, because it's not easy working with an attorney, dealing with our legal system, even when you have an attorney on your side, hanging in there. Our society does not make it easy. So perhaps these are also some resources that you can offer survivors and you can familiarize yourself with to help support survivors on that process. And if you're at that point where you're working with someone and it sounds like they may have a legal issue and you're thinking about, how do I even start putting on a different hat and talk to a lawyer, or start to figure out how I can even explain the situation, start the conversation, help advocate for the survivor. At the most basic level, I say, go back to what you're very familiar with: who, how, what, where, when, and why, and look at some of these elements. And in fact, this is also how ALIGHT works and trains and collaborates with our community partners that are in our system. We're very glad to work with. I know Restore Innocence is a great partner that's very prominent in the task force, and the Avery Center and others. But even when we are supporting our partners in sending their requests to attorneys in our network, we actually do not share any identifiable survivor information. That is a key element of our work, because we are focused on survivor safety and confidentiality, and we are looking at how do we describe the basic legal situation so that attorneys in our network can have a sense of whether this is something appropriate to their skill set that they can work with. So you would look at not as much, what is your name, but you're looking at or what is the name of your trafficker at this stage, at the initial stage. That is not information that you usually need to get out there and blast out there. You are looking more at being able to describe what is the individual's relationship to the adversarial party. The adversarial party may be a trafficker, and it may be an intimate partner, a former intimate partner. We also work with survivors across the spectrum, whether some that are still in trafficking situations trying to get out, some that have recently exited, some that are years out and still have that trail of legal problems following them. And so this still may be years after the trafficking experience, and yet they are being triggered at work or maybe harassed by an employer, not the trafficker, but yet being re-traumatized and being retargeted because of their vulnerability, which is something that we recognize as being related to their trafficking experience that we still want to be able to help them with. And so the adversarial party could be an employer. So figuring out what is the relationship there, looking into the elements of sex and labor trafficking that I know this task force addresses and encompasses, talking about the type of legal need, for example, that resource that I alluded to earlier, the type of assistance sought. Are they looking for counsel? Do they just want to understand their rights? This is my first job in an office. I'm trying to transition back. I'm triggered. I'm trying to understand, is it me? What are the right parameters? Sometimes it's just advice. Sometimes it's, I need an advocate on my side to go and help me deal with law enforcement as they're investigating the trafficker, to help advocate for me during that period of time. Whatever it is, being able to think about what type of assistance they're looking for, the location of the legal need. Usually you look towards, if there's a hearing or a notice or any kind of court document, if court is involved, being able to point to that jurisdiction, that is very relevant for attorneys to know. But if it's more interpersonal, if it's an eviction issue, what is the county, what is the jurisdiction, things like that. And then any type of deadlines, especially urgent deadlines, upcoming deadlines, notices of hearings, things like that would be important. And I also advise to include a sentence or two on why. And the why is where there's an opportunity to pull at the heartstrings of attorneys and others, where it's really spelling out what would this assistance enable the survivor to do. Just as before we talked about criminal records, it's saying, for example, the survivor has criminal records in 3 states and has had trouble getting a job because these records keep showing up in credit reports, or not credit reports, in background searches, or the survivors interested in adopting and these criminal records are barring their application. Being able to give a little bit of the context so that, again, we're able to pull at the heartstrings of the attorneys a little bit and get them involved. So this is the process that we want to familiarize you with so that you can have attorneys. The attorneys in our network are available to the survivors that you're working with. The survivor would reach out to you for help, and you would go through those steps that we just went through in the previous slides of helping them identify their legal issues and think about the type of help that they need, and have them reach out to our intake advocate, and we'll have that phone number a couple of times. What happens from ALIGHT side is then our intake advocate does conducts a screening over the phone, available in English or Spanish, and post the request on our app, again with due considerations to privacy and safety. Identifiable information, survivors' names, locations where they live is never shared. What's shared is that sort of legal issue. It goes on the app, it goes into, based on the type of request, it targets and notifies attorneys from our network with pro bono opportunities. So sometimes we call this the lift of pro bono. If you're familiar with Lyft, instead of drivers, we have lawyers. And so when there are family law issues that come in, only our family law attorneys get pinged with that opportunity, and they can review and they can see if they can assist. So it's a way for you to be able to access a network of vetted, supported attorneys that are working within their expertise. These are family law attorneys that sign up for family law cases. These are not attorneys that are working outside of their area of expertise. ALIGHT's role is quite unique. We're also not representing the survivors. We are a connector. We're a way to connect and strengthen all the amazing work on the ground that's happening, but recognizing who has access to 50+ attorneys at their fingertips, who has time to call back and forth, who wants to actually put a survivor through calling 10 different places and be told no, which is what we see, which is what we hate, which is what we're fighting against. So this is a way to streamline for their request to go to a larger number of attorneys. And so the attorneys are able to respond through the app, and their information is available to the advocate, who provides it to the survivor, who then calls the attorney, and then they can give more information, and they can give more context. The attorneys can ask whatever specific questions they all need to ask, because they all have very different questions to ask based on the type of request that it is. And ALIGHT is there to support the process. Again, ALIGHT is not providing the legal representation. We're there to support the connection, but we're not a referring party. We do not receive any money from survivors for making. We don't charge survivors or our partners for making these connections. We're there to bring in more attorneys into the movement, to support them with training, to support these connections, and to support the important work on the ground that's being done. So this is again the number to call, and Julie had kindly shared this and another slide as handouts. So you should have that available even now. So I wanted to make sure you can walk out. I like to get right to work, because I know tomorrow you may have a case. This always happens to me. I meet someone in an attorney in a certain state or a community partner, and then the next day, I'm really glad we met because I actually need that resource the next day. So I want you to be ready for tomorrow and the day after in case you have needs. And so this is a good resource to keep handy for you, and there will be a resource for survivors. So the result is justice. Justice is not easy. Justice has many steps. It has many players that need to come together. It's definitely not an easy process for survivors, but we're here fighting for true justice. True justice, the way we define it, is what is justice on survivors' own terms. It is not always putting the trafficker behind bars. It is very often solving their own problems and doing what they need to do so that they can actually be free, so they can actually finally feel free. And this is the other handout that Julie has shared with more information about our work. I, again, invite you to check out the resources that we've developed to support survivors working with attorneys. If you know attorneys that might be a good fit for our network, please have them reach out to us. And we go through a vetting process. We meet with every single attorney in our network. And as I mentioned, most of our attorneys are in Colorado, but we're also developing a nationwide network of attorneys so that we can help with the cases that are outside of Colorado as well. And so we're actually quite open to where the attorney's jurisdiction is, because the stronger our army of attorneys, the more resources we can offer to survivors. So please share that resource, and I invite you to stay in touch, to reach out to us, follow our work through our website, through our newsletter, reach out to us at connect@alightnet.org with questions. And I'm really excited to have this opportunity to connect with you and to hear what a breadth of services and even states are being represented on this call, because it's a great opportunity to get the word out. I'll pause here to see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Mariana. This is Jane Jones, and I'll be going to the queue. We have a few questions that I will read, and you can answer. One of the first questions we had came from Dan, and he was asking, how are you funded? How is ALIGHT funded?
Through individual donors and foundations, and through strategic partnerships with our technology partner, through incredibly dedicated volunteer in-kind contributions, just on the ALIGHT side, not to mention the attorneys that are in our pro bono program that are providing their services for free.
Fantastic. And then I have a kind of a two-part question from Jamie. And Jamie is actually a former board member here at the task force. First question, she says, I work with women who are working in illicit massage parlors. Many of them do not have citizenship. Are there legal services that can help them? That's the first question.
Well, ALIGHT services are open to all survivors of trafficking in financial need of free legal services, whether they're foreign nationals or whatever their residency status is. Again, if they have immigration issues, unfortunately, that's something we don't cover, but they tend to be covered by legal aid and other wonderful organizations. And so the CONET hotline would be one place to start to connect to immigration services. On the other hand, if they have anything other than immigration services, you know, on that list that we had, we do, we don't do, those are just some of the examples. But if they need advocacy, if their identity has been stolen, if they're dealing with debt issues, that is something that you can have them reach out to us for.
Okay, great, thank you. And that I think that sort of ties into, there's two more questions with this. And that was the last one. She had said, how do we keep them from being deported and start the process of getting them citizenship? But sounds like you just answered that with that information, getting a hold of CONA. So then also in regards to the actual massage parlor, oftentimes there is a pimp running it, but he doesn't put his name on anything. and that could get him in trouble. So when a bust is made, oftentimes it is the lady's names on the lease, utilities, etc. The pimp does not get arrested and evades the system. Is there anything set up that could bring justice where justice is due and clear the names of those who are unfairly arrested?
Well, there's two elements to this too. I mean, these are really great questions, and it points to injustice that really rankles some of us.
Yes.
I mean, there seems to be a political level to this and then a legal level to this. Part of this is advocacy and changing policies around this, changing laws around this. And then on the legal level, you can also still have survivors reach out, and on an individual basis, attorneys can advise them, you know, is there anything to do in the case of fraud? You know, right, I don't know all the details, but right off the top of my head, you know, if there's leases and contracts, getting high-powered contract attorneys involved to see what they could find. These could be unconscionable contracts. There could be fraud involved. They can find perhaps remedies that are available, and a lot of it is case by case. But I think that's one possibility.
Right. So getting it in the legal hands of who can help is really kind of the answer. And then one last question here that I have, how do you recruit attorneys and how much time do they typically volunteer?
I recruit attorneys. This is also a pretty self-selected group, I have to say, because I recruit attorneys by speaking to their sense of justice and reminding them why we all went to law school. And that this is the ultimate way to use your skills and really your powers for good, because I want to recognize that we all have power. All of us on this task force, we are so fortunate. We are often sitting on resources and power that we can share with others. We could help bridge to bring others in who have been cut off from these opportunities. And so this is a very specifically designed program, an opportunity for a specific type of attorney that is interested in contributing their skills and staying within what their strengths are. But all of ALIGHT's work is in being able to provide a managed, supported, controlled system where we're vetting who all the attorneys are to the best of our ability. So it's not just something going out to anybody anywhere, but it's going out to the attorneys that we've worked with so that survivors can get quality representation. And the length of commitment really varies, because it could be a half-hour consultation on the phone, which still goes a really long way, to hundreds of hours over multiple years.
Wow, that's the full spectrum right there.
Yeah.
I did get it. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I did get another question from Evan, and I think this is just kind of a clarification. Is asking, so the survivor doesn't have to cover costs with ALIGHT, but they do have to pay for the lawyer that represents them, or is this free as well?
The services are free. If they qualify and if we're able to find a match for them and they're working with the attorney, these are pro bono services. It's free legal help.
Fantastic. So that's all I have in the queue. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But as of now, I'll turn it back over to Julie.
Yeah, I would add a question. Do you have any attorneys here in Colorado Springs that are on your list? I'm curious if anybody has engaged with you down in our area.
Yes, we do. We're always looking for more. Something that once you start working with me, you'll know I'm always asking, who do you know? And so we're always looking for more, but we do. We actually have some family law attorneys in Colorado Springs, and then some other issues are able to be handled remotely, especially now. And so we know one of the challenges actually that it's not just particular to Colorado, it's all over the country. A lot of times the resources and the legal resources tend to be in one part of the state, but the realities are the needs are all across the state. And so because we're able to remotely engage attorneys in pro bono work and connect them to survivors wherever they are in the state, there's also quite a lot that attorneys can do out of Denver, and then if they need to come down for hearings.
Yeah, I love that. Great. I'm glad to know that there are people in our area, and we definitely will put the word out that maybe some more need to get in touch with you. So
that would be great.
If you know some lawyers, we now know who to connect them with.
Good-hearted lawyers, because we'll be looking at that.
Good. Jane, were there any more questions? One more? Okay. You have to unmute. Hang on.
Thank you, Joey, for unmuting me. So yes, we did get a question from Tiffany, and she's asking, do the attorneys get any training around trafficking or working with people who experience extreme trauma?
So part of our vetting process is we check references of attorneys for their past work with vulnerable populations. It's not a requirement that they've worked with trafficking before, and part of that reason is we don't have a lot of trafficking specific legal resources currently in this country. That's part of the problem of why we have these legal deserts. We need to do a lot of work to bring a lot more resources, especially from law firms and especially from the private sector, to be more familiar and work in a more controlled setting on trafficking. But we're still in the process of that. And so we do not require that they've had past trafficking experience, but we look for their other type of pro bono work and work with vulnerable populations. We provide a lot of support resources, as I mentioned, and we do offer specific trauma-informed training specific to human trafficking and working with human trafficking survivors. And in fact, we have a fantastic opportunity coming up for lawyers in our network on February 24th, where we're partnering with a fantastic organization from New Jersey called Sonar Institute that focuses on trauma-informed counseling and really bearing into the practical considerations of working with survivors in this setting. So this is definitely a focus of our work.
I did get one more question, and that is, what resources are available if there are no attorney matches? Do potential clients go into a queue for potential attorneys, or are they referred elsewhere? We do have a high match rate for what we're seeing, and if we don't have someone in our network that is a fit, if we don't have capacity in our network currently to work with a survivor, what ALIGHT does is we go out and we look for attorneys as much as we can for those one-off connections. And so when you saw that map where we worked in other states, we don't have the network we have in Colorado and all those states. That's us going out and working our network, working our connections to find a specific attorney that we can connect the survivor to. And we're also available once the survivor works with that attorney. We're also there for that process. You know, once the survivor connects to an attorney, we're not saying it's done, good luck. We're actually part of the process. We're following up, we're checking in. And one of the biggest things that we're looking for is how to catch other legal issues that are coming so we can connect them to other attorneys. And so we always do our best, if we don't have someone in our network, to develop our network on the go. That's fantastic. So often, you know, survivors feel like they kind of get lost in the shuffle, you know, talking to, you know, to one resource and then, you know, going off to another, and they feel like, you know, the original resource is just nowhere to be found again. So that's fantastic that you just sort of. And I know that because when I'm calling on behalf of survivors to other places, when I'm going through the process of calling different places and trying to hear back and trying to get an answer, it's awful. And I'm not the one whose life is on fire. I mean, it's really, really tough what we're asking survivors to do. So we want to help them as much as we can with that process. One more question from Jillian. Yeah, I mean, these are great questions though. She's asking,
definitely.
how do we feel about male attorneys dealing with female survivors?
Oh, interesting question. Yeah, that's an interesting question. And sometimes the male attorneys are asking me that question. Sometimes it's the male attorneys that are the most motivated to understand how they can address this from the get-go. I mean, we have to also recognize that there are so many layers to working with an attorney being an authority figure that could be re-traumatizing, because the trafficker may have, but by definition, been seeking to disempower their victim and use their relative power to their advantage and use their authority in society. Some survivors have shared that, you know, attorneys were the buyers of their, you know, and then they have to move forward. I mean, and then just men can also be triggering, especially if different elements come up. And so that is something we're aware of. If it actually, we haven't had any survivors specify that they can't, that they don't want to work with a male attorney or come back and say they've had issues. Again, because we're trying really hard to you know, develop our network very thoughtfully and who we're working with. But what I am very hopeful about, because even when it's female attorneys can just by representing authority figures, if they're not conscious of that dynamic, it could continue to the process of representing a survivor could be harmful. Or when it's done well, which is the beauty that we're really going for, which is the legal representation could be part of the healing process for the survivor, where they're working with an attorney that respects them, that is trained to really emphasize how they have choice and they're leading the process. And so sometimes working with the male attorneys is part of the healing.
I was going to ask, Joey, would you mind unmuting Jenny Jessen? She wanted to kind of address this herself since she's been through this.
Hey friends, I appreciate the question about male attorneys. As a survivor myself and a subject matter expert who works internationally and domestically, I am profoundly grateful for the work of ALIGHT and any attorney that is willing to pursue justice on behalf of those that have been exploited. And gender of the attorney is completely irrelevant. That's just my 2 cents worth. So, Mariana, thank you so much for your passion and your pursuit of justice.
Well, thank you.
And was that the last of the questions?
Yes, it was the last of the questions.
Okay. Well, I can't say thank you enough, Mariana, for being with us. I think I met you maybe 2 years ago and just thought, holy cow, we've got to get her down here somehow. And it never worked out, and COVID. And that's how we got you down here. And I love that. So thank you for giving us your time. It is absolutely amazing to now have all these people that know that ALIGHT is out there and how to access the resources that you have given to people. I just think it's amazing. One of the things that you said, there were several things that struck me, but one of the questions that you posed in talking about how to engage with survivors and the questions that are asked is, do they have the power and resources on their side that they need to tackle the issues that they're facing? And I think as somebody who sits in the chair that I sit in and interacts with the people that I sit in, sometimes I don't even know the questions to ask. The things that people tell me, the situations that cross through my life, sometimes I just sit and I think, I have no idea. And when it gets to the legal stuff, well, I mean, yeah. I'm useless. I mean, honestly, there are words that you used and things that you posed that I was like, wow, I didn't even think that that could be an issue. And we all need to engage in this, because if somebody comes through our path and we know that there are these resources out there, but we don't know the questions to ask and how to help them get there, then, you know, where are we at in this? So thank you so much for bringing that. I love your passion for justice. And I love that you also said or asked us, what is justice on the terms of the survivor? What do they see as justice for them? Because I can have a lot of things that I think are justice. And for them, that may not be their focus or their goal. And we always have to go back to, how do we serve survivors best? How do we take a step back from the issues that we face and that frustrate us and really sit with them and walk with them in this and seeing what is justice for you and how do we get there? So thank you. I am just so grateful that you were here with us this evening. Everybody will be back again next month. I am hoping, have my fingers crossed, I don't have a confirmation yet, that we will have a detective with ICAC, which is the Internet Crimes Against Children, with us. If not, I'll find somebody else to be with us, but we'll give it about another 5 minutes. Guys, continue to chat, network, collaborate, find those resources. Thank you for being with us, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.